Hi, my name is Ben Werner. I run the Housing Justice Program here at the Eastside Freedom Library, and I want to welcome you to the American Recovery Plan Act and St. Paul City budget meeting with council members Nelsie and Jane Prince. We're going to hear a short presentation by Holly Houston, who is the Chief Budgetary Officer for the St. Paul City Council, talking about the various uses of the American Recovery Plan Act dollars and how they'll set the St. Paul City budget. So we'll hear that short presentation, break out into small groups, and then come and report back and close out. Thank you for being here tonight.
Councilmember Prince.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. And thanks to all of you. We're so lucky to have the Eastside Freedom Library in our community where we can convene as neighbors and talk about our most important priorities for our city. And so I just want to say how grateful I am to the whole team at the Freedom Library and to all of you. Yes, a hand. It's an incredible resource. I've been on the East Side for 40 some years, and the Freedom Library has made a tremendous difference in how we work together as a community. So it's not your imagination. I also feel very fortunate to be here with my colleagues, Councilmember Nelsie Yang, and on behalf of Council President Brenmoen, her relatively almost brand new aide, Jessica Larson, and each of us will say a few words. Among the most important work that the City Council does is to set the city's budget annually. And what's important about our getting together tonight is to hear from you on how the city should invest our precious resources to create the kind of city, and for those of you on the East Side, the kind of East Side that we can all be proud of. We are also here because of the one-time opportunity that we are getting when we receive $166 million in American Rescue Plan money to use for the roughly defined area, and I'm reading it at its most flexible, of COVID recovery. Those impacts of COVID were great in our community for families, for businesses, for our kids who didn't have adequate digital access while trying to learn from a distance. And our community really came together to show what we believe our priorities are and put our shoulder to the wheel to get food distributed and needs that people had in the community. I cannot get over all the food distributions that were done on the East Side by so many different groups. So now we're getting money from the federal government, which they have been very tight with for the last 40 years. And this is a rare and precious opportunity to figure out how we want to spend that money. And I also need to say, not to be too political, but the City Council gets to set the budget. And what we're dealing with right now is that the administration, led by Mayor Carter, is moving ahead on bringing forward a number of initiatives to use American Rescue Plan money for that are things that we as a community haven't had a chance to talk about. So I just want to say that if your council member is represented up here, you know we're concerned about that. And if you're from other parts of town, I'm so delighted that there are people from Ward 3 here. That is fantastic. Make sure you talk to your council member about your concern that this money go to fund priorities that we never, ever get to fund because we never see this kind of money. I also want to just say $166 million, and Holly, correct me if I'm wrong, is about the amount of money that the city of St. Paul brings in property tax revenue every year. So this is a huge amount of money, and we won't see money at this level again. I mean, hopefully we will. Hopefully the feds will keep investing, but for now, we don't know when this is going to end. I also want to say, and I don't want to belabor this, but for East Siders, it's not your imagination that we get less than what we're due. And I want to say how important it is that the East Side makes up more than a third of the city's landmass, and I think more than a third of its people. We're diverse, we're multicultural, we have higher rates of poverty, unemployment, and our people, with the exception of me, are much younger than the rest of the city. So keep that in mind as you're kind of setting priorities. And then when you're thinking about the budget, I just want to do a little housework here. The city is responsible for Parks and Rec, including youth programming, caring for our urban forest, which is kind of a big deal because ash trees not being removed can be very dangerous. We're responsible for libraries, housing and economic development, the condition of our streets and sidewalks, and public safety. We work with the county, which is responsible for public health and human services. We work with the school district on coordinating the hours kids need after school programming at parks and libraries. It's a balancing act because increased costs result in increased taxes, which fall heaviest on low-income renters and people on fixed incomes. Finally, I have this cold, and I will not do any more talking tonight. I'm here, we're all here from the council to listen. We want to hear what your thoughts are and your passions and concerns, and we want the budget that we put together to be reflective of the best ideas of our community. And I will turn this over to my colleague, Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Councilmember Prince. Hi, everyone. It is it's so exciting to be able to be here with you all. I'm Nelsie Yang. I'm the council member in Ward 6. So we are in Ward 6 right now. So I want to say welcome to the East Side. Welcome to Ward 6. I'm Nelsie Yang. My gender pronouns are she and her. And upon getting elected in 2019, I became the first Hmong American woman and also the youngest person to be elected to the city council. I was 24 years old at the time. And I want to share about why this moment right now is so important to me personally. 3 months after I got inaugurated into the city council was when the pandemic was declared, and all of us basically shifted to doing our work from home. And there was so much struggle, like throughout the years. Throughout the year, I really reflect on all the communication that came to my office from people being displaced from their home, from struggling to even find food. And they would ask for, hey, where's the closest food shelf that I can go to? Or, what can you do to support me so that, I can find a job and be able to keep making a living and support my family. These are all the things that I hold, in my heart, and it's why I'm so passionate about making sure that people in the East Side here especially get a voice in deciding where our city budget goes and where American Rescue Plan dollars go, because this is money for people. These are our dollars. I call it the people's dollars. And why it's so important for East Siders to be at the table is because our community is a beautiful, beautiful, diverse community. And in knowing that, in knowing the history of this country as well, it's often people who are Black and brown, indigenous, people of color, people who are working class families who get left out. And this is something that's being played out right in front of us. It's why when you look at the statistics for vaccination rates in St. Paul, Ward 6, the East Side here is the area that has the lowest vaccination rates. And when we talk about where unemployment is happening and where high rates of unemployment is occurring as well, it's our families here in the East Side. And so your voice matters so much. I cannot emphasize how important your voice is. And for me, as someone who grew up as a daughter of refugees, someone who grew up in a low-income family, growing up not ever being in these spaces like this, but realizing that our community is so much more powerful when we can bring other voices to the table. It's why I'm committed to building that collective power here with you in the East Side to make sure we do bring more voices here, to make sure that where our dollars go is representative of where our people actually need it to be. And I've been voicing out from the beginning about how important it is for us to be making sure that money does go to nonprofits that are doing work to engage and support our communities directly. That money goes into vaccination rollout as well here in the east side. That is going to our small businesses, and that is supporting families, especially for what they need. And you know what? Why that's so important to me is because I know when folks have enough, when they're doing well, that's how we build safe communities as well. That is how we build safe communities. And so I am so passionate about all of this. I know you're passionate about something as well, which is what brought you here. And I can't wait to hear about that. I want to say thank you for spending your time here to be in community with other folks. And thank you for bringing your voice to the table so that we can make sure the East Side gets represented and gets what they need as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Holly so that she can share to you. Oh, Jessica, so that she can share more with you as well. She's the legislative aide from the Ward 5 office. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both council members, Prince and Yang, and I thank you so much for having us here. I'm here on behalf of Council President Amy Brenmone, who also represents Ward 5. I'm Jessica Larson Johnston, and 3 weeks in, so it's a steep learning curve and fun. And I'm going to talk just briefly. You've heard such passionate pleas and from these other council members, and again, your voices can be heard, and this is an opportunity to do it. Ward 5 covers a slice of the east side, and if you're unfamiliar of where Ward 5 crosses, we have the interstate highway until Edgerton, and we also have Larpenteur on the north all the way down to Railroad Island. So it's a smaller section, but mighty. And I just want you to know I'm happy to be here. I am all ears. I am taking notes and want to represent Ward 5 and the East Side and get your voices heard. So thank you so much for having me. I am ready to get to work. Here is Holly Houston.
Hello, thank you, good evening. I'm Holly Houston. I am the City Council's Chief Budget Officer, so I'm their budget person. Their mayor has their own budget people, so I'm happy to be here tonight and just set some context. I'll try to keep it light and not too much into the boring budget talk, but that's my passion, and so I'm excited to hear about your ideas and work with the City Council as we head into the budget season and make some dramatic and really a budget that speaks and works for everyone that lives here. So there was a PowerPoint. I don't know if you saw it, but like I said, I'm just going to set some context about what is the budget and what are the uses, qualified uses for the American Rescue Plan. So just on, let's see, page 2, slide 3. In 2020, we all know is an unprecedented year, and the city had to adjust services and had to deal with some budget reductions as well. And when the City Council adopted the current budget, the 2021 budget that we're in now, we had no idea that the American Rescue Plan was coming. And so the City Council passed a budget with 0% property tax increases, 0 staff layoffs, and 0 use of emergency funds, or also known as rainy day funds. There was revenue reductions of $8.6 million. There's also budget reductions of $8.2 million. Those reductions were in public safety, frontline services, and internal service departments. And there was a few budgeted investments last year in our technology and communication. And then the City Council added back some important services in libraries and parks. On slide 4, this just gives you an overview of the city budget. The takeaway here is we have a $633 million budget. That is a large budget. Of that, slide 5, of that you can see that over 50% is the general fund. So you'll often hear government talk about the general fund, and that is really supported. That supports the services that we depend on, like like public safety, and parks and libraries and roadways. And of that, the general fund is supported 40% by property taxes. And Jane was right. It's just $164 million last year. So that's how much we collect in property taxes, yet we have a $633 million budget. Our general fund is really dependent on property taxes as well as local government aid, and that is money that the state of Minnesota gives the city and other cities as well. Page 7 just talks about the services I just briefly mentioned. So the general fund really supports public safety, transportation and infrastructure, libraries, arts, parks, programming, community development, housing, and then health and human services. It's also Ramsey County and the St. Paul Public Health Department. If you look on slide 8, this is a pie chart of what your property tax bill looks like. So when you get one bill in November, what your property tax bill is. On that bill, there's actually multiple bills from multiple taxing jurisdictions. So on that bill, the city is only 29% of that total bill. And then it breaks out how much of the general fund and how much of your property taxes goes to support different services. So you pay $43 for library services a year through paying your property tax bill. Okay, I'm going to switch gears. I'll stop. Is there any just budget questions on the overall city budget and how much it costs? Okay. The American Rescue Plan Act. So on March 11th of this year, the American Rescue Plan Act was passed, delivering $350 billion state and local dollars. It was the government response to COVID-19 and bringing back jobs. And so of that $350 million, as Councilmember Prince mentioned, this is unprecedented, once in a lifetime opportunity. Metropolitan cities received 45.6 billion, and St. Paul's allocation is 166.6 million. And then, okay, David?
40% of the city's budget goes to special funds. You didn't mention that. What are those?
So special funds, so that is the other, there's general funds, special fund, debt funds. Special funds are accounts that pay for themselves through fees, so, or a grant. So there are fees that aren't supported through the property taxes. So for example, if we received a grant, that would become a special fund. And so that period that you can spend the money might be longer. There's different accounting rules within that. So we use the special fund to account for things that are self-supported, essentially. Yep. And then, so as I mentioned, 166.6 million. We are obligated to dedicate and allocate the funds by 2024. And then we have to have the funds all spent by 2026. So the different dates there, that means that sometimes a construction project for housing might take longer than, it might take longer than what would be 2.5 years to get complete. So we have until 2026 to get it complete, but we have to have it under contract and we have to have the money allocated to a certain contract by 2024. And then this is really one-time money to support the immediate response to COVID-19 emergency from the federal government and its economic impacts. So that's really the goal. So as we get into some of the qualifications, that's kind of sets the stage. So the uses for this money is to support public health expenditures. So that's mitigating COVID efforts, public health or public safety, addressing negative impacts caused by the health pandemic, serve the hardest hit communities and families, replace lost public sector revenue, provide premium pay for essential workers, invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And the ineligible uses are offsetting a reduction in net tax revenue. So we couldn't use this money to not raise the property taxes next year, is what that means. Depositing it into a pension fund, using it for debt service, so we can't pay off something that we've already secured and are paying for. So again, this is really what is the immediate need now and how do we bridge the gap and recover from this pandemic. Legal settlements or judgments, deposits into rainy day funds, or general infrastructure. Yeah.
I'm confused about hearing that it can be used for water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. infrastructure, I guess. But it can't be for general infrastructure, like roads, sidewalks, that sort of thing.
Correct. There's always, once you dig into the 150-page details, there's a small caveat. So you can use it for streets or pay-go infrastructure, so you pay it off as you go. If you have lost revenue, so you can replace your lost revenue. So we as a city can replace our lost revenue and use it for any governmental service. So we could, if we have lost revenue, potentially use it for sidewalks or something like that. It's confusing. But it just shows you we're looking at every option and keeping everything on the table. Yeah.
Water, sewer, and broadband is pretty done deal.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
You said something about city budget 600 and some odd million, and you're only getting about 140 something or 166 in property tax a year. So we're that like half a billion every year. That's sustainable. Like reach out for that amount of money every single year for defense.
Oh, no, I apologize if that's, so we have a fully balanced budget. So the 633 million is a balanced budget. Property taxes is a percentage of that balance. We also get state funding from Minnesota, and that has been ongoing. That is about, that's 60, I'm getting them, it's 20, right.
I was talking about that because if the feds ever decide not to fund us, we're in trouble, right? So that's what I'm saying.
We're very concerned. Yes, we protect our local government aid and are very appreciative to the state for providing that. And that's something that's always we take to the legislative each year to continue to support that general government, local government aid. The other funding that we receive is from fees and services, assessments, as well as grants and other state, local, or federal grants. And then franchise fees is another large chunk of our general fund budget as well. So we're not in debt. I mean, we have debt, but it's planned for, and we have a balanced budget.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. So the franchise fees, those are the ones like Renewable Energy? Are there others?
Utility, franchise fees are from the utilities, so Excel, District Energy, Comcast, yes. Yep. Then strategy for federal funding opportunities. So on slide 13, available to the city is the 166 million. We also received 16.5 million in emergency rental assistance. In the pipeline, so Congress is still talking about additional earmarks and a transportation and infrastructure bill that we're watching closely. So that could be additional funding that could come into the city and hopefully support some of the streets. Available competitively. So there's another 60 million that the city is looking at. You can put in an application and qualify for additional funding through this act. The city is also looking at leveraging partnerships with the state, county, and schools, which is 3.6 billion, I think that's total. But we're working close with Ramsey County as well as the St. Paul School District to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts and we're talking and using this money effectively. And then, as I mentioned, there's in Congress right now, they're talking about the American Jobs Plan as well as the Family Plan. So as the city of St. Paul has started to think about the American Rescue Plan budget and how we can invest this money, they've talked about 8 different topics. So on slide 14, neighborhood safety, housing, jobs, community mental health resources, vaccines, modernizing city services, city financial stabilization, and infrastructure where it's allowed. So that is the very high-level American Rescue Plan. There's a lot more details, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions later, too. I brought all my FAQs and many pages of notes. So Just to go over the city council budget process and where we are now, the mayor is currently in the development of the proposed budget. He will propose his budget to the city council in mid-August. And then from that time, the city council will be able to deliberate and meet with the departments over the next few months and hear about their budget, as well as hear from their community. We have had a community event in the past and hoping to get that scheduled. I don't have details on that yet, but usually after the mayor's proposed budget, we like to get immediate feedback and reaction to what he had to say and what's in his budget. Last year, we also had a budget survey, which is online, so you can provide feedback written or contact your council office or email. So I think I'm getting ahead of myself. But just to go back to slide 17, the budget process and ARP are not one process, but they will overlap. So when we think about the city budget process, that's a long-standing annual process, and then all of a sudden we have these ARP funds. So I know that the city is asking departments what are their priorities. There's council members asking the community what are their priorities. But some of this ARP funding might also overlap in the budget process. And so the city council and myself really wants to make sure that I understand what proposals are budget, just base normal everyday services, and what are the American Recovery Plan. So we can make sure that we're just allocating this money wisely and using it to the best of our abilities. The City Council has established budget priorities way back in the beginning of this year, and those are sustainable street infrastructure, affordable housing and stable neighborhoods, reducing gun violence, and responsible fiscal policy. Just to give you a little background on how the city budget works. So each year our costs increase with cost of living for staff as well as our contracts, but our revenue doesn't automatically increase unless we raise the property tax levy or increase fees. So each year we come into the budget planning cycle with a deficit, and so that's through the budget process. Some departments may reduce their budget, they have a budget target, and at the end of the day, we find out what their budget is being proposed at in August. And so just the goal here is really to understand what are your priorities and work together to make the best budget that we can. As I mentioned, there's different engagement opportunities with the City Council at a community event. You can also tune in. All the budget meetings are recorded and all the materials are available online at the Legistar calendar page. You can contact your council member, take the survey, reach out to me or anyone else. So I'll take questions. I appreciate your time. And I appreciate your questions.
Oh, I got a question.
Yeah.
So on here you got affordable housing and stable housing. You got reduced gun violence. Sustainable street infrastructure plan. But if you look at but in the City Council Work Plan 2021, they got affordable housing and stable housing, reduced gun violence, sustainable street infrastructure. For the last 4 years, Jane Prince has been sitting in the City Council. This is her 6th year, and so I'm a little bit concerned because what I'm seeing is in the inner city on the east side, on the west side, and North End and Rondo and Frogtown, I'm seeing a lot of families are being displaced and gentrified. A lot of people, because of the eviction moratorium, will become homeless. From what I'm hearing, there's no room in the shelters. They just shut down the hotel vouching program. And so I'm wondering, why is this money not hitting the inner cities? Because it's not reaching us. So if a lot of people don't get their rent paid or they get turned down for help in, where are they going to go? So this is a conversation need to be had now. I live over at Wilson Ridge apartment where I just been there a year and a half. My grandson was sitting in the back. He was in the parking lot. I just moved in the building. Sitting in the parking lot, and somebody shot somebody right in the hand. This is right over on the east side off of 94. And then another girl pulled up in my building in the parking lot and they say was wrestling with a gun and got shot in the neck and bleed out. It's a lot of promises being made. So what I'm saying today is, when I was door knocking for the petition, I noticed that people was living way below their means, paying $1,400, $1,600, $1,800 living in places. I mean, this is the job of the city council. This is the job of the mayor, that we need to lower the rent so women will be able to one day, single-headed households will be able to one day afford to be able to live into a sustainable, affordable, accessible place. When I did ask Jane Prince about affordable housing, she said that it's coming. Mayor Carter was at an event. He said it's coming. We need affordable housing right now. We can't afford to wait. I'm sitting around watching infrastructures go up, which make me mad. You know, I'm watching the stadium go up. I'm watching all these condos go up. And then another one was supposed to be the Ford Plant Way. It's supposed to have been affordable, and now it's not affordable. And so I don't understand why we're giving a sentence to landlords to get the rent to people who own Section 8. It's a voucher. You should be able to go anywhere. And so what I'm saying, people have to start doing their job. They have to start listening to what's going on. Because if we don't start helping these women and children and families, the counselor even told me I was calling homeless shelters. The counselor even told me that some women are prepared to get a tent and go out in the streets and sleep in the woods with their children. You know, this is not acceptable. This is not housing. I came up here in 1980. It didn't matter what income you had. You could live anywhere you want to live. To me, it seems like that the people in the inner city are not being heard. It is your job to make sure that these women and children are not sleeping on the ground. It is your job to make sure that young 14, 15, 16-year-olds are not running around with automatic weapons in their hand while the police run around and lock them all up. So my job today is to tell them we have to start standing up. We have to start speaking up. We have to make sure that we put people in the office who's going to represent us and hear our voices. Because nobody should have to pay $1,400, $1,500 to live with rats, roaches, lead, paint. I seen it because I was door knocking. I'm not lying. Some places on the east side I almost threw up. So I'm telling you, this is not okay. It's not happening just on the east side. It's on the west side. I was door knocking over there too. Even people living in public houses living below their means. And so that's not even affordable. Section 8, if you own Section 8, you make too much money, your rent go on. Public housing too. So I want to say to everybody, it's a job that needs to be done. These are women and children sleeping on the ground. These are women and children getting put out the shelter, sleeping in 30, 40 below zero in cars. I know because I've been told stories. I've seen this stuff. You do, Nelsie Gang. We have to do a better job. When we go and start talking to our politicians, we're talking about affordable housing now. We're not talking about 2, 3 years, 5 years down the road. I don't know what Melvin was talking about when he mentioned that. He was like, so when the condo went up into Frogtown over the Rondo, that building. So we asked him like, so how many units going to be affordable? He said, well, he'll make some of them affordable. What is some? 2, 3, 4 units? So all them apartment buildings over there, all them condos sitting over there in Rondo and Frogtown empty because we can't afford to live in them. So the rent going up, the wages going down. It's not making any sense. So I'm just going to say, you guys need to come on out into community. You need to start collecting stories. You need to talk about people who voted for you, because I voted for you. I supported you. We need to start talking to the city council. I'll be glad when you guys open up so we can go down there and start making sure that things are getting said on this paper, getting said is put into action. This is from all the women's in the back here, too.
If there's any other questions for me, I'll turn it over.
Clara, I really appreciate your statement. I share your frustration. And that's why we're here tonight, is to hear from the community. I won't go into everything. We definitely have a problem with the right kind of resources to build deeply affordable housing. And I think that's a discussion that we can have tonight with this federal money. We have an opportunity. The city of Minneapolis, I think, decided to put about a third of their American Rescue Plan money into housing. That's what I have proposed. And because we need to be able to get down to housing that is affordable to people at least 30% of area median income. So these are all things that the progress hasn't been great. I appreciate your frustration. I won't make excuses. And but we're here tonight to hear from people. And Alexis?
Can I just say a comment?
Sure.
What,
Can you?
after what she said, oh, I got a loud voice.
Oh, get loud and get super loud.
Do you want to run the mic?
Hi, I'm Alexis. I actually, well, my comment is going off of what she said. She said her name was Clara. Okay, nice to meet you. Bouncing off from what she said with housing, we also need to help families that are dealing with child protection.
Right.
I brought it up in multiple meetings. We've met with each other. My situation, I got 2 children that had been removed from my care for 2 years because I was in foster care twice. I finally resolved my criminal case, but you know, I'm really worried about what child protection does, especially with Hennepin County. I don't want Ramsey County to turn into what Hennepin is, where you just constantly take children just because you feel like it, because you don't.
Because you can.
Just because you can. Like, people don't give black and brown bodies a chance to actually be a parent to their children. Rather than just giving us a chance for taking our children and trying to punish us for something that we probably didn't do, or throw us in jail. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out what are we going to do about these racial disparities. And I'm in Ramsey County now, and I'm actually really scared of Ramsey County because I've been in Hennepin for so long. I don't know anything about Ramsey now. And I don't know any resources that will help me with housing. I'm trying to get my children back. And every little route I go, I get denied because of my CPS case. So what can we do to ensure that other families are not going through what I'm going through, where I can't get employment, I can't get housing, I can't get on anything? What can we do to help families that are dealing with child protection that are unfortunately and probably in a termination of parental rights petition, and try to help them turn their lives around so they can actually become the parent that they want to be to their children?
Alexis, thanks for your powerful story. I have to say, I don't know how we fix it. Child protection is a county function, but in terms of a lot of the questions you had about how to find housing, how to get to the right person, I mean, any of us on the council would be willing to meet with you and help open doors. I mean, those doors should be obvious and open to you, but if you haven't been able to find them, that's something I'd be happy to work with you and figure out where you go at Ramsey County and who your county commissioner is, and so we can work on that. And I'll make sure you get my number. I think you may have it. Yeah. Well, that'll work. Do you want to take the mic, because Carl is trying to. Okay.
Hello, everybody. My name is Simon. I apologize, I was a little late, and so maybe you might have covered this before I got here. But can you talk about if there is sort of any existing partnership with the county and the state to kind of address some of these issues that are being brought up? Like, is there a task force where you all are looking at combining resources with the state, additional resources there? And, you know, I know Ramsey County is thinking of using their funds to do housing, so like, can you all speak to, you know, are those conversations happening? What are they,
One thing I can tell you is when it comes to housing, the city and the county have been working more closely together in the last year because of COVID than they have ever worked together before, in my experience. I mean, I've been in this job for 6 years, but I have not. But I've worked in and around the community and City Hall for a lot longer than that. So there is a lot more there's a lot more ways that the city and county are getting out of their silos, because what we realize is we haven't been solving anybody's problems. And so that's a really good question. And when it comes to the child protection side of things, I just am not, I don't know. I mean, that's simply, I don't know what's happening with that. Or the city doesn't have human services or mental health services. And so I just am not sure about, or the foster care program, that's all a county function. But if you have questions, we can try to help get answers. So definitely reach out. And I think Nelsie wanted to.
I have a couple of things to add. I want to say thanks to the folks who have been sharing about your lived experiences so far. Those are real experiences that need to be heard. And honestly, it's spaces like these where elected officials need to be coming to, so that they actually hear about it. You know, we don't want elected officials who are just sitting behind a desk or a computer doing their work. We need folks who are willing to come out and be in community and actually make that change. And so, Alexis, to your point about the CPS, I think that what's really important is for us to actually pull in county commissioners into that conversation as well, and not just in Hennepin County, but in Ramsey County too. And as you all know, like next year we got like elections happening in Ramsey County too. So I think like in addition to making change, it's about like electing people who share your same values as well, who are willing to be, you know, in those seats to make change too. And I'd love to connect with you and hear more about what those things are for you. I know we've connected a lot about like work around homelessness as well, and doing so much to, you know, stop evictions from happening for folks who are living in encampments, because right now when we don't even have enough housing for folks who are experiencing homelessness. And so how can we also be kicking people out of what is basically their home too? And so the demand for housing is so real and it's so urgent. And if you are taking a look at our upkeep and being able to provide housing for people, we are so far behind. It is completely embarrassing. But you know why that happens is because people who are working class families, you know, the working poor, are left out of the systems that we live in. And this is why it's so important to be building a movement of working class people, to be making sure that our government is working for working class people. I can't be more serious about that. You know, I cannot emphasize that enough. And also, in addition to that, this is exactly why it's so important to hear from you all. You know, do you want to see money being put into affordable housing? I know for me, I do. My question is, how much do we want to invest in it? Because we can say that, but I would love to hear from you, like a percentage. Because after this, what Councilmember Prince and I talked about is we'd like to put together a document and to deliver it to the mayor's office, saying this is what we've been hearing from Eastsiders, this is what they care about, and we'd like for you to follow through on these commitments to the people who live in the East Side who have been left out historically in St. Paul. And so that's our commitment to you, and also with Council President Brenmo's office as well. So I would love for us to get to the breakouts, because I know that so many of you came here and wanted to get a chance to speak. And so I think that that's really where we can hear even more stories from people, and to hear from you, like what you would like, where you would like to see these dollars be invested. And we're here seriously committed to making sure that we deliver those to the mayor's office and to our colleagues as well.
So the question back to you then is that, can I answer my question in Barb?
Yeah.
So the question back to what I just said, there's not a housing problem. She's been saying this for 6 years. There is not a housing problem. Because if you see all these condos, I'm telling you, all these apartment buildings, all these houses sitting around vacant stuff for rent, if you don't have the income level, if you don't have that job paying $20, $30, $40 an hour, you can't get there. And because of the screening process, you know, like what was that, it'll come to my mind in a minute. Like if we don't have things in places for renters to be able to access housing, how can they get there if we don't have the jobs that they can be able to afford? Like like where I live is $833. What single mother of 4 children have $833, $933, $1,000, $1,200, $2 to live in an affordable house? We don't have affordability problem. We have racism going on. So it's stopping people from accessing housing. You know, I had like 5 or 6 checks run on me just to get into a apartment building. If I hadn't been working my bond, like I told you before, I told Jane Prince before, all the houses sitting around on the east side vacant. Property owners are moving out. POC people moving in. And then the house is sitting vacant. Then ask the mother who works 3 or 4 jobs because she afford to get this house with rent to own. These are the kind of conversations I've been having with her. These are the conversations I've been having with the mayor. These are all excuses to keep stalling and pushing us back. And these women are not going to be able to afford to live in affordable housing. We don't get affordable housing. Every time the news come on, something happen in the community, all you see, oh, a big condo going over here. Let's give another hand clap. You know what I'm saying? All over in Frondo and Frogtown and Rondo, where Mary Carter sit at, all that stuff over there is vacant. You know why? Because we can't afford to be in there. So we don't have a housing problem. You got to stop saying that. We have an access to housing problem. That's what you need to address. Because if a mother's sitting in a shelter and she has a full-time job, like I was sitting in the shelter, going to school full-time, she should be able to access housing. But when you get these rich landlords, corporate landlords coming in saying, no, we're not renting to blacks, we're not renting to Mexicans, we're not renting to Asians because we don't want those POC in our community. That is exactly what's happening in our community. Gentrification, displacement. It's not a housing problem. You know it's not a housing problem.
And I want to share that's exactly why, you know, I was like one of 4 you might have to help me remember who voted against the lattice. Because if we have developers who are coming into our community saying they want to build housing, but then there is no room in their plan for affordable housing, and also it's all just what we call 50%, 60% AMI housing, that's not affordable to our community. So that cannot be you know, the status quo at all for what our communities are. We got to keep, that's why we talk so much about, you know, building deeply affordable housing at the 30% AMI level, and why in St. Paul we also need to like create a mandate for 30% AMI housing as well through policy work. And that's something I'm really committed to, Claire. I know that you are too. You were a part of that big win, you know, in the lattice fight. And so I want to say thank you for that. We have a lot of work to do, and you're so basically, we had a developer coming into Frogtown. They had a proposal around building housing, and in no part of their plan did they have any thought about, you know, providing housing for our poorest families in the Frogtown area, and that was unacceptable. So thank goodness for a lot of organizations who work together to fight back. You know, I think what I actually just got a text from one of the organizers saying that there was a lot of progress being made between them and the developer, and so I'm really happy about that. But I know, you know, we're in this fight for the long haul for housing for folks, for affordable housing for families in our community, and we got to keep doing that work.
I just want to say this. My name is Lynette Harris, and I wear many hats in the community on the east side. But listening to everybody and Clara about affordable housing, and I'm with you guys on affordable housing. I sit on the housing committee with Ben Warner. But I just want to say this, and please don't take offense, is that once, just say hypothetically speaking, once we solve the issue with affordable housing, right? When we solve it, right? We have to look beyond affordable housing for our people. We have to look at not only generational wealth, but intergenerational wealth. And so that is so important, because you can stay at that level once housing is taken care of, but what about generational and intergenerational wealth for our children? And so I would really like to see, you know, monies being used for future generations, for intergenerational wealth. That is what, at the end of the day, is going to sustain our people.
That's why I talk about the piece with having affordable, so you can be able to keep some of your money put in the bank and then lead on to home ownership, rent with option to buy. So they used to have those type of programs.
Yeah. Well, I'm also talking about just not housing I'm talking about economic. I'm talking about money being invested in energy sustaining programs for teaching our children to invest in those companies that would cause intergenerational wealth for us. So that's all the plan. Yes.
They got a plan, that's a plan.
So I see you've had your hand up. Let's take your comment and then we'll go into breakout groups.
I thank everyone for the recording. My name is Ananda, and I just moved here. I actually live around the corner. And I've had so I work at the University of Minnesota, and I make I make a sort of lower middle class income maybe, but I haven't had the experience that we have just lots and lots of empty houses. Part of the problem is there is a lack of housing. People in my, salary range, my friends, we have trouble finding apartments. And part of what will lead to gentrification is these people are now going to come and compete with people who've been here a long time. We just have a lack of housing in St. Paul. We want young professionals to come live in our city. This is a vibrant, beautiful place to live, but we can't chase them away by saying, we want policies that will encourage housing to be built and people to come here. There isn't a lot of affordable housing for someone even making $40,000 a year. It's hard to find a good apartment. So I don't necessarily agree that we can just, put on rent control and things. We just need more houses in the city, more multiplexes and more apartments.
You're absolutely right that we don't have enough housing in St. Paul for the people who want to live here. Our population is now about 313,000, and we do not have enough housing for people who want to live here. And in all fairness, Clara, I have been talking to you for years, and I have been consistently fighting for 30% area median income and trying to get things built. I couldn't get the council to put the requirement of 30% area median income in the comp plan. So we should get together and talk over some of this stuff. I have not, I believe affordable housing is our #1 priority for the city. So in any event.
I saw you had your hand up. Do you still want to?
Absolutely. Let me see if I can get it towards you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shalea Lowe, and I just wanted to say that, we have programs out here for, we have Section 8 and we have Section 42 that goes off your income and this, that, and the third. But when you do go to certain places, say you want to leave St. Paul, go out to Eagan, Burnsville, you don't want to be in the cities and you want to raise your family out in the suburbs, you're limited. When you say, hey, I got Section 8, I got a voucher. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't take that. we don't participate. And you can be a renter at your address that you're trying to leave for over 11, 12 years. You can be one of those people that actually love your foundation and take care of, and you cherish your voucher because you're limited or because you've only got so much money being brought in to where this sustains your family and this is what kind of holds you above water. But we're limited. We have to be stuck, or if we don't want to be in this, if you don't want to be where you grew up or you want something else for your kids, and then you try to, go out there and see what's better. I want something different. I want a different scene right now. I don't want to be, here right now. It's, we don't participate with them programs. So it's more or less of everybody needs to be open-minded, because why do we have to just be stuck in one place? So now the community, that's Section 8, that's, everybody knows where everybody's kind of at because it's only limited. You can't really go too far out, you know what I mean? Because guess what? They don't take it, you know what I mean? So it's kind of unfair when it comes to that too, and I just wanted to state that because I know people that's going through that, and like I said, good tenants, been in their units and their houses for years and really good people, but no, I'm sorry, that program, I'm sorry, we don't participate. And it's like a slap in the face. So then what, do you just stay there because you're stuck? You know what I mean? You're stuck there now. You just can't move around, or you can't have better for your family because it's limited. You know what I mean? So that's a concern for me. Yeah, for sure.
So before we go into breakout groups, I will say there are some states where it is illegal to discriminate on the basis of income. Minnesota is not one of those states. So that is another policy we could change. So we have sectioned about a half an hour to go into breakout groups. I think that we should do 3 groups. The sun is kind of coming on that side, so I think we'll try and do one group here, and one group there. And the question that we kind of want to just lead off is, what are your priorities for the budget, and what would your priorities be for this American Rescue Plan Act money as well? So let's try and do 3 different breakout groups with each of you in one group. And Holly can pick the group. So what I'm hoping is that one person from each of the groups is willing to come and talk a little bit about what you heard or what you didn't hear and what you want to report. So can I have one person from each group who kind of report back on, oh, Chris has got it. All right, here you go, Chris. So I will be looking at you.
Thanks, Ben. All right, so like I was just telling my group, there was a lot of good conversation. So if I do miss something, please just yell it out like, hey, you missed this. All right, so there was a lot of conversation in our group. Speaking of, so I'm just going to label, so I'm just going to say some talking points that we did talk about regarding the ARP and the city budget. So we will. So what our group mentioned was financial literacy in our city of St. Paul. We talked about investing in the youth, investing in jobs, micro grants, utilities as well, and daylight on Phelan Creek, right? Yeah, Phelan Creek, and making progress on that, and making the process easier. Even if we get all these money, if we make the structure really hard for folks, especially people of color, then even if we get all this money, our community, our neighborhood won't be invested. And so that's one thing that our group would like to put out here is make the process easier. And yes, what am I missing?
You did say invest in youth, but we want investment in youth space.
Yep.
I do know that there's a lot of money that's already invested in the rec centers, but that's not working for black youth. I don't know about other youth, it's not working for black youth. Mm-hmm. So please make sure you update that note. Yep. Youth space for black youth.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then I said have ongoing, maybe every 2 months, a meeting, and we be part of the planning process and know where the allocations are going to be funding these organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is correct. And
I think we also talked about the hub centers as well.
Yeah, having our own hub centers
for black families as well.
For black
like
families.
the Latino and Asian and things like that.
American Partnership.
That we can have like a funnel. Because we don't have that in our community. Our community has to go down and be humiliated in Ramsey County and get turned down.
Like we would run our own. Like we would run our own resource. Direct action. Yeah, like we'd be running our own resource center, like for rent, for utilities, making sure you get some job training programs.
I mean, we're doing it anyway. We just don't have enough. I mean, it's coming out of the kids' money now. Mm-hmm. But if there's money available for it, let's put the money towards it, right? Mm-hmm. Invest in the right way in our community.
My center is in my car.
Our van.
We look at our car.
Another thing that came up in our conversation is direct payment to tenants as well.
Yeah.
To prevent displacement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like direct rent payments where they ain't got to go down and be screened and humiliated for asking for some rent to get paid. Pay the rent now because in the long run, if you don't pay the rent, it's going to cost you more money to have them homeless. So pay the rent now, get the rent paid, work out some kind of plan where they can stay in their house and find some more house.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, team, so much for supporting. Thank you. And I'll turn this over to the next group.
Okay, we had a lot of good conversation in our group as well. Everyone participated, which was awesome. There was a lot of talk about I'm going to mess up my notes. Affordable housing and access to housing, as well as diversity in housing. So how can housing look differently and also meet the needs that the residents have? So people might not need, they might need micro housing or a community housing or a space where they can live and work in close proximity. There's also discussion about a lack of transit on the east side. Making housing that's also sustainable, energy efficient, and that's good housing so that it's built and constructed well and will last a long time. Also some discussion on that it's hard for landlords in St. Paul to accept Section 8, and it was mentioned that the landlord training isn't being offered during COVID. Just also safety and care for neighborhoods, and so there's been some complaints about broken glass or transformers out, and there hasn't been a response from the city in a timely fashion, if at all. I mentioned mass transit, feeling safe. It's hard to cross some streets in certain areas. I believe White Bear was mentioned. And police don't appear to be doing traffic stops to confront the speeding traffic and miss lights and miss stoplights. There's some empty storefronts and empty buildings, so making it a place where everyone feels welcome, wants to shop, stop, and be a community. There was feedback of that within Hillcrest as that gets developed to make sure there's community space and also activities for people of all ages that can enjoy the space. Prosperity Park isn't a park anymore, and so that's a beautiful space that could be revitalized. Hillcrest could be net zero. Invest in mental health, or why don't we call police peace officers, and some have weapons and some don't. Vacant building inventory. I just wrote that down because the mention of vacant buildings and that they've been sitting for a long time, so that was a note for myself, sorry. And then jobs. So I think we kind of rounded out the conversation that we also need to have jobs that have well-paying incomes, maybe a potential job, green jobs and green job training center. Or what about a guaranteed income program for entrepreneurs, or creating incubator space for jobs that are just starting out? Got it? Okay.
Anyone else? Did we miss anything? Should I be the reporter?
Would anyone from my group like to report out? I will. Thank you. And correct me if I'm wrong or if I miss anything, but there was, I think, a consensus that half of the ARP money should go to housing. There was a strong feeling that housing should be city-owned, that in did you say Vienna, John? Publicly, in any event, publicly owned housing to keep it permanently affordable. When it comes to, we discussed the unfortunate reality that our tenant protection ordinance was thrown out in court, and one of the things that was suggested that we bring back, which was not part of that, was a right to counsel for eviction court, and that the city should cover the cost of counsel for people who are being evicted. We have some concerns about adequate staffing in the housing development area. There was a strong feeling that we need to have more rental vouchers, that of the only 1 out of 4 people who qualify for Section 8 are able to actually get a voucher. So we need to do something about that. There was a call for culturally competent parks and recreation programming to create safe places, but also relevant places for kids who are at risk, and we should probably be replacing some of our programs that are less relevant. One example that was given of a great youth program was Urban Roots, and I heartily agree with that. We talked about that a budget is a moral document, and that our elected officials have to have moral courage, and they need to fight for the community. There was a suggestion that there should be job training programs for public service jobs, like emergency medical support. There was a great suggestion given that the city look at converting a hotel or motel into single-room occupancy housing or shelter or temporary shelter housing for homeless. And I know John didn't say this, but the group Freedom from the Streets has proposed that if we did that, that it would be a project that they would like to manage. And the idea being of having people who have been in that circumstance be in a role where they were able to provide housing in a very empathetic way. We had a library employee in our group, and we learned that library is providing resources for absolutely everything you can imagine people are coming in for, whether it's that they need help with a resume, or they need language assistance, or they need mental health services or social services. And so there was a recognition that on the east side, it doesn't seem like we have enough services to serve the people who are in our community. And finally, there was a strong recommendation that we upgrade Hayden Heights Rec Center and Hayden Heights Library, because they are really important institutions on the east side, and they need a lot of work. Anything else from my group?
So before we close out for the night, was there any other comments anyone wanted to make? You can use the other microphone too.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to focus on primarily is rehabilitation. We're offering, it's a good thing that we want 50% of the funding to go towards housing and affordable housing and accessible, stable housing, but we need to focus on the rehabilitation and the education of these people so that it doesn't continuously happen. We help these people now. I don't want to be looking for help again in 2 years. So I think that's obtainable with things like financial literacy and cultural resources, and basically the rehabilitation and the education offered as well with these different programs that you're considering too.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so we'll close out. There's a couple closing remarks, and then I'll close this out for the night. So Jane, you want to go first?
This has been a really good conversation. It's been a hard conversation. It's been really honest, and I'm grateful for that. And so we're taking notes on everything you've said, and we're going to put our heads together, council colleagues, right? So thank you for this, and we'll continue to be in touch.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everyone for being here tonight. It was so insightful. I truly felt like, people came here really committed to community. I want to say thank you for that because no one can do it alone. It really takes everyone to be able to make change together. And so I know I'm completely committed to the things that we've talked about today. I'll be working with my colleagues to put together a document so we can give it to the mayor's office as well. And I do want to say there are so many other ways that you can continue pushing for the things that you care about too. You only got to have 3 ward offices out of the 7 here, so feel free to email and also call the other offices along with the mayor's office as well. So thanks everyone, hope to see you again.
On behalf of Amy Brennan and myself, I also just thank you for the honesty and sharing the stories, everyone's stories. We are all a community, and we all just have to keep working together and keep talking. Keep communicating, keep talking. There's 7 wards, and let's push what you guys want out of the ARP and the budget. Let's push it forward. So let's keep the communication going and keep the conversations going. Thank you so much for having me and council members Yang and Prince. Thank you.
Can we give Holly a big round of applause for presenting? Okay, thank you so much again, everyone. Last thing I'll say, I said at the beginning too, National Night Out, August 3rd. We're doing a big party. We're closing the street. We're having opera. We're having theater. We're having food, mini donuts. We're having Circus Juventus come out. So we'll have music. It's just going to be endless. So come on out. 5 p.m. we're starting, and we'd like to see all of you there. So thank you so much for coming, and if you didn't sign in, please do so as well. And I'm handing over to Peter.
So I want to thank Carla, who's been videotaping tonight, and this will be available on the library's YouTube page if you want to see yourself again, or if you need to prove to your partner that you were actually here, or whatever. It'll be on the YouTube page. And I want to thank... And I want to thank my colleague David McAllister for helping with the setup as well. Thank you all for coming.